It is a new market year in the Lowcountry, South Carolina, and we're excited to talk about how buyers might have more leverage than they think in the new year. So let's get after it. All right, everybody, happy 2026, Chris. We're kicking off another year in the Lowcountry. We're super excited about that. And today we want to specifically talk about ways that buyers can take advantage of the new year and the market conditions that we're already seeing taking shape. And I know that that sort of centers around one key word. What's the key word?
I would say that's leverage.
Leverage, right.
Yes, sir.
So with leverage, let's talk about the first thing with leverage. We've been talking through the last couple of years, we've seen inventory continue to rise, not overwhelmingly, but it has continued to rise. And we've seen a balanced market evolve. We've been talking about that. And so what does that specifically mean for buyers? Like, where do they have leverage and maybe more leverage than they think that they might actually have right now?
Well, I guess the first thing to say is we know that the leverage is shifting towards the buyers because we're tracking the monthly housing supply. And that is our key metric. That's what that measures supply versus demand. And so as we watch that metric evolve now over 4 months, then that's why we know it's a buyer's market, but we also know it's shifting. I mean, we know it's a balanced market, but we know it's shifting towards a buyer's market. So as it shifts towards a buyer's market, buyers have more leverage today than they did before. And what does that mean for a buyer? Maybe more information. Yeah. There more options, less stress,
right?
Less urgency. Buyers are able to make more informed decisions, more calculated decisions. They're able to walk away. And that creates opportunities that they might not have had a couple years ago. So in my opinion, as we watch this market evolve and we expect inventory to continue to increase, this is the market the buyers have been waiting for.
Right.
And not only that is we've got what's also impacting things are interest rates. Interest rates are coming down a little bit more. I checked this morning and there's some teasers under 6% now. Right. So these are things, creates a nice opportunity for buyers that are actively engaged in the market to make some good decisions.
And leverage all that, right? Because what I loved hearing about that was that making good decisions and informed decisions and maybe not rushed decisions. Buyers have the opportunity now, of course, it depends on the micro market. There are some micro markets here where there's pretty tight inventory still, but generally speaking, because of broader inventory, you've got the opportunity. Here's my first choice. Here's my second choice. Here's my third choice. If I don't get my first choice, and I don't feel pressured about that, I'm okay with the second choice. Like maybe that's the one that was meant to be. So I love that. And translate that back to sellers. The buyers need to understand that sellers that are serious sellers in the market are open to things like concessions, credits, flexible timeline on closing. They're certainly open to offers, adjusting price where appropriate, adjusting terms where appropriate. And I think that is big time leverage there, not being afraid maybe to make an offer on somebody that's been on the market for a while. Serious sellers want to engage with a serious buyer. They want to do business. And so I think that's a really key leverage component there. And, maybe once a buyer gets through a transaction negotiation, right? There's another opportunity after that happens. Let's talk about that.
There's really two opportunities or two times during a real estate deal that we see this topic of leverage kind of surface. One is structuring the initial deal, the negotiations back and forth between the buyer and seller to get that deal put on paper and agreed to. But then there's another time that bubbles up, and that's after the buyer has their opportunity to do their due diligence.
Right.
And they've got kind of a new outlook, a new assessment on the property, maybe from a home inspection, maybe they've talked to an insurance company, whatever has evolved during their due diligence. Now we see it as another opportunity for that buyer to go to the seller with some leverage and say, hey, we need to fine tune this to make this deal happen. And sellers are having to pay attention to that. So I think the sellers that are prepared for those types of conversations after the contract, those are the sellers that are coming out ahead. They're not kind of back against the wall. Oh my gosh, this is terrible. They've prepared for it. They're kind of expecting it. And then the buyers are going to ask for it. So there's a lot of preparation behind the scenes that I think helps in that second set.
Yeah, and so buyers, the home inspection process, that whole due diligence process isn't necessarily geared and shouldn't be geared about trying to horribilize a deal or blow up a deal. It really needs to be looked at saying, hey, listen, I want to get as informed as I can about this piece of property. I want to be comfortable and excited about this piece of property. And if something's developed in that due diligence process that creates an additional conversation, a serious seller is going to probably be open to having that conversation.
You said a key word. You said informed. I think a situation where buyers and sellers are informed, correctly informed, real stuff. I think in markets like this, you've got to be careful that something that might not be a problem or an issue or something spirals out of control.
Yeah.
So you've got to make sure that an agent should really help their clients with this to make sure that the things that are important are real issues, real things.
Yeah. And so I think for buyers going into this market, piggybacking on our last video, we talked about getting engaged in the new year early, not waiting for spring market, et cetera. Go back to that video if you haven't watched it, because there's a lot of really good points for buyers about ways that can be leveraged for you to act right now. And the key thing from our perspective is we're always counseling buyers and sellers is get engaged early, have a strategy discussion, get clarity on where your leverage is, get clarity on what's happening in that micro area of our marketplace, what the stats look like there, understand what your grounding is on that, and make a really solid approach entering into the year.
And as over the course of the first quarter of 2026, I mean, we are expecting inventory levels to rise, and we'll track it closely. But if you're thinking of buying or selling in the springtime, I mean, right now is the time to really dive into the market and understand the market, understand the options, understand the direction things are flowing, so that you can make a calculated decision. And so I see buyers that are in the market now working with agents, kind of identifying exactly what they want. And then those properties are going to come, they're going to come hit the market.
Yeah. And buyers are already engaging. Just to be clear, I was talking to one of our agents that on New Year's Eve, they were negotiating the contract. They ended up having one of the very first deals of the new year, technically just that next morning. Yeah. It's already happening. Yeah. And that's the bellwether we're looking for in January. We're going to be talking about the market stats through the end of 2025 and what that's doing to shape the new market year. Where that video is coming up in just a couple of weeks when we do our recap for 2025, our outlook on 2026, the steering factors coming ahead, et cetera. So guys, get involved, get active, get educated, get confident, and make it a great start to the year.